Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So I've not done one of these in a while, so I thought that I would kick this next maybe series off with building muscle. So obviously the reason I want to go into building muscle is because a lot of people, they don't really understand the importance of maybe what muscle tissue has on the body in terms of like longevity, health benefits, etc. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be explaining why your aim should be to build muscle at some point in your journey. Maybe not forever, but definitely at some point. I'm going to explain the health benefits of building muscle first of all, and then we're going to go into what's the best and healthiest way to build muscle over a prolonged period of time. And I'm going to go into a few facts about what I believe that everybody should do. So, first of all, building muscle. What's the health benefits of it? So, if we look at, obviously, different health benefits, one is longevity, but basically down to muscle tissue being the largest organ in the body and it releasing something called myokines. So what myokines are is they are an anti-inflammatory product that's released by muscle tissue to actually help pull down inflammation. So the more muscle tissue someone has, the more myokines that they release. Yeah. Then if we look at joint stability, so I'll just put stability. Everyone will be more stable the more muscle that they have. Because remember, if we build muscle tissue around a joint, i.e. around the knee joint, if we build the hamstring, the quad, the adductor, the glute even, that's going to strengthen our knee joint, and also not to forget the calf and the tibialis anterior. But the more stable someone is, and the more stable joints are, the easier it's going to be later down the line to pick up your shopping, get up out of a chair, literally hold yourself on a day-to-day basis, getting up and down stairs, etc. So this is the most important, in my opinion, because the more stable someone is, the less chance of all-cause mortality they're going to have. Because I think one of the main leading reasons of all-cause mortality for older individuals is falling and frailty. So falling, breaking a bone, etc., and not recovering from that. And then also, if we look at another one to do with longevity and lowering all-cause mortality, we can look at heart health. So if we look at heart health and we know that muscle tissue helps produce myokines, which are anti-inflammatory. So the more muscle tissue someone has, the easier they'll be able to deal with inflammation, get rid of inflammation. Then if we look at heart health, and obviously if someone has too much muscle tissue, i.e. they're using anabolic steroids and they're getting too big, then this is going to put more strain on the heart. However, if someone is natural and they build as much muscle as possible and the body learns to get rid of inflammation easier and deal with oxidative stress, this is going to improve heart health as a byproduct. So if we look at these three different pillars, should we say, I'd say these are the three main pillars that will actually help with longevity later down the line. And that's all because muscle tissue is a healthy thing to have. We can also look at a couple of other different ones off the back of this that probably aren't maybe as important, but they will actually help in an indirect way. So if we look, you may have heard that muscle tissue is more metabolically expensive. So what we mean by that is that the cost to keep hold of muscle tissue is more than the cost to keep hold of fat tissue. So metabolically expensive, the term means that in order to keep hold of muscle, we actually burn more calories to keep hold of it. Yeah. So the body has to work harder to keep hold of it. So therefore our metabolic rate, or our BMR, basal metabolic rate, which is how many calories we burn basically by doing nothing, this will be higher in an individual who has more muscle mass or muscle tissue. Yeah. It's not by loads, I'll be completely honest, but there is a little bit of a win there, yeah? And then another one with muscle tissue and having muscle tissue based around our ability to progressively overload. If the more muscle tissue someone has, obviously the more stable someone's joints. The more stable someone's joints, the less likely to get injured. I could have just wrote injury, but I've not done. Less likely to get injured. I mean, that one's a bit of a, it depends. Because obviously it depends how the person lifts. It depends how much the person lifts. It depends if the person progressively overloads properly, etc. But in my opinion, building muscle tissue should be on everybody's radar, no matter what age that you are at. Because a lot of people think that, well, if I get past 40, let's just use that number, then I'm not able to build as much muscle. I think that that's incorrect. The amount of clients that I've seen build muscle way over the age of 40 and actually into the 50s, it's very much doable as long as you've got the right structure. So to start off with, them are the main reasons why I like every single client having an aim to build muscle. And let me just say that doesn't mean to build tons and tons of muscle. I mean, even if you build an extra 10 pounds of muscle, then this is going to have all these different benefits. Obviously, building muscle is tough. Building muscle takes a long time, which we'll go into next. But these are the main reasons why building muscle is super duper important. So next part, what we're going to go into is how long does it take, what does it take, and how much can you build naturally per year. So this is a big one that I feel like people need to learn more about, so we'll go into this one at first. So you're probably thinking this yourself, like you're maybe thinking, oh yeah, I can build, like if I gain 20 pounds of weight over the year, probably 10 of that's muscle. It's probably not, right? It all depends how you do it and how long it's over, right? So for example, this all depends on really how consistent you are. So if we look at consistency, that's the main one. Training age. Is number 2. And then number 3, I'd probably say body fat percentage comes into it. Right, so as you know, you'll have heard a lot of fucking coaches say consistency is key. I'm one of them coaches, it is, right? So consistency, it depends how consistent you are. Being in a surplus, it depends how consistent, let's write these down. Depends how consistent you are in a surplus. Depends how consistent you are with your progressive overload. I'll put prog overload, which I'll go into. And it depends how consistent you are with the likes of your daily habits, I always find, right? So them are probably the main 3 for me, because obviously, I'll put maintenance, and I'll explain that now. God, that's gone fucking wrong. So maintenance and surplus, /surplus or surplus, right? So your ability to be consistently in a controlled calorie surplus, or your consistency to be at controlled calorie maintenance whilst progressively overloading your lifts. That's key, yeah? Because if you consistently progressively overload and get a little bit stronger each week, whilst your maintenance calories are in a surplus, you're going to grow muscle, yeah? Obviously, we need to be hitting protein target and all that type of stuff. I'm gathering that you are, right? That's what I'm gathering. Make sure you hit your protein target, yeah? But these are the main two drivers, yeah? Consistently in a maintenance or in a surplus, and consistently progressively overloading with a sprinkle of daily habits on top. So with building muscle, you've got to have the key foundation habits nailed. So what I mean by this is consistently tracking your food, consistently hitting macros to a certain degree, consistently sleeping a fairly decent amount of like time in bed, or staying a fairly decent amount of time in bed, getting a consistent amount of movement in, and probably doing a tiny little bit of cardio to actually improve your heart health or keep your heart in a good place, and also keep the endurance of your muscle tissue up there as well. So obviously this is the foundation, yeah? Another one I've not just mentioned is digestive health as well, so keeping that there. But remember that your daily habits are the main thing, yeah? With helping you do these other things, yeah? These other key points, should I say, rather than things, Kinel. So if you've got a good daily habit scheme where you're getting a consistent amount of training sessions in, doesn't matter when they are, you're getting a consistent sleep and wake time, you go into the toilet regularly and your stools aren't messy, should we say, and you've got a good quality stool, yeah, which I'll talk about in a further YouTube video, then you're going to build muscle, right? Obviously, this takes time to build up. This is very messy now, but this takes time to build up. So I recommend doing a dieting phase first if you want to build muscle and you've not got to the correct body fat percentage, which we're going to go through in a second, right? So your daily habits are very, very, very important, right? Training age, right? So this is where, if you're a beginner, put beg, then you'll just literally gain muscle from picking up a barbell. And training and resistance training. So weight training is obviously the key. I'm gathering you all know that, yeah? But beginner, you can probably grow like 10, probably even to 20 pounds of muscle in your first year, right? Intermediate, then you could probably grow 7 to 10 pounds of muscle per year. And then more advanced, I'd probably say they sell at 1 to 6 pounds, right? But with that, because this put me off once, I was like, oh, fucking hell, I don't want to work out all year to gain 1 pound of muscle. One, right? But from coaching people now for 12 years, and I've coached more advanced people for a while who are natural people. Yeah, I've coached assisted people as well, but I've coached more natural people who are advanced, and they've gone from intermediate to advanced, in my opinion, yeah? Then what's happened is I've definitely helped them build more towards this 6 pounds. It is doable. These are the main 3 things you've got to consistently do though, yeah? It can't be 1 week, you smash it, the next week you fuck it off. It's got to be where you're just consistent over time. Like, it's not being perfect every single week, but it's being around about 80 to 90% every week over 100% of a year. So then you might be thinking, how do I know if I'm beginner? How do I know if I'm intermediate? How do I know if I'm advanced, right? Beginner, you've literally just started training. So 0 to 1 years of training. Intermediate, I'd say 1 to 3 years of training. And by training, right, let me clarify this. I mean that you've consistently been lifting weights every week for that amount of time. And advanced, I'd probably say, is 3 to 4 years plus, depends person, right? So that means you've consistently been lifting weights every week, not necessarily like without having 1 week off, but over a 12-month period, you've lifted weights for, I'd probably say 95% of that year, yeah? Every week, yeah? And that's your training age. So that'll dictate how much muscle you can build within a yearly period. And then body fat percentage. So with body fat percentage, how this will dictate how much muscle you can build over a year, then the reason is down to insulin sensitivity. Yeah, so insulin sensitivity. Basically that means how well your body can absorb and utilize nutrients, right? The lower someone's body fat, up until a certain point, equals higher, I'll put IS for insulin sensitivity, yeah? So the lower somebody's body fat percentage, the higher their insulin sensitivity, right? So when we're looking at body fat percentages, we ideally want to be, I'd probably say 10 to 15% as a male, 15 to 20% as a female. Females naturally carry more body fat. So we want to be, if we're a male, between this marker to be in a good, healthy position to build muscle. As a male, as a female, want to be between this to build muscle. So if you're above them markers, what does that mean? You probably need to diet and lose some body fat until you get to that point whilst keeping all of your muscle tissue. Yeah? So this is getting messy now. I should have wrote this down here, but never mind. So how long does it take, right? So building muscle takes years. Like I've just put here, this should kind of maybe link into this, yeah? Because how long it takes will depend how, one, consistent you are and your training age, yeah? That'll be how long does it take. If you're inconsistent, it'll take fucking forever. If you're consistent, still takes forever, yeah? But how much quicker it'll be will depend on your training age, but times by how consistent you will be or are able to be, yeah? So it takes years. In short, it takes years. So I'd probably say like a natural person who is, my arrows are going all wrong now. A natural person who is more advanced over a 3-year period will probably be able to gain a maximum probably of 18 pounds, and that's maximum, yeah? The more advanced you get, the lower this number gets, yeah? So, and it'll depend on your genetics as well. That's one thing I've not put in here, to be honest. Genetics do come into play. And that's just your actual genes that will load the gun, yeah? But your ability to fire the gun is based around these, what's in your control. That's not in our control, so we can't really worry about that, to be honest. That's kind of why I didn't put it in there, but I have added it. But these we can control, which will then relate to this, yeah? So basically, how much you can build is all this, and how long does it take will depend on this, really, yeah? And mainly down to your level of consistency, which mainly comes down to your daily habits. What does it take? You've probably gathered, right? But let me just not rub it off. So what does it take? So it'll take being consistent over time, but let's just reel off the foundation habits. That it takes, right? So the foundation habits are obviously nutrition and eating whole foods, tracking calories. So tracking calories, using a calorie tracking app, yeah, so I'll just put calorie tracking. And then obviously your consistency with your training. So it'll be literally weight training times 3 per week. And then again, like digestive health, comes into play. So like I always say to every client, we always want a client passing 1 regular stool per day. So as a minimum, yeah? Like the more calories you're on, the more stools you'll pass, obviously. But that is very, very important, because if this doesn't work well, you're not going to be able to absorb and assimilate nutrients, yeah? Then movement is another one. Like I'd probably say 2 times 30-minute cardio, and then 10k steps, 8 to 10k steps daily. And the main reason for that is blood flow, to help nutrients get delivered around the body, which again will tie into digestive health to help. And then we'll put sleep on there as well, yeah? And that's just getting a consistent sleep duration, which could be 6 to 8 hours a day. You can have 9 if you need it every now and then, obviously. Everyone loves sleep, me included. But that's literally what I'd kind of base it off, and there's quite a lot there. But if you're struggling with this, and this has maybe made you think a little bit more, then drop a comment and I'll answer all the comments, because I can give you a little bit more personal feedback if you need. But yeah, so this next part is about body fat percentage. So I'll just put BF percentage. So you heard me saying previously that as a male, 10 to 15 is the goal, yeah? As a female, 15 to 20% is the goal, right? So if you're higher, lower. So if you're higher than 10 to 15%, obviously we want to do a dieting phase up until we get down to this, yeah? So for example, say if you're 25%, then what I would advise is doing a 12-week dieting phase. I'll put DP for dieting phase. So 12-week dieting phase where you consistently lose body fat, you keep all the muscle tissue, you build them core foundation habits I said in the last part, and you get down, because over 12 weeks you'd definitely be able to lose 10% body fat. Yeah, as long as you're consistent and as long as you're losing an average of around about 0.5 to 1% of your body weight each week, yeah, you will get down to this body fat percentage. Yeah, if you're lower, you can go into a surplus. Yeah. Yeah, and we'll go into a surplus in next week's episode on how you'd establish this, what the rate of gain per week is, etc. I'll go into that next time. So, same with female. If you're higher, let's say you're 30%, you'd do the same 12-week diet phase and losing 0.5 to 1% of body weight per week. And if you're lower, again, surplus. Sorry for the messiness. But this is where people get stuck, yeah? And you've probably done this before, where you're around about this body fat percentage, and as a male or as a female, and you're like, I want to build muscle, so I'm gonna just start pushing myself up. You're gonna run into a brick wall at some point, because as we gain muscle tissue, we're gonna gain bits of body fat. That is inevitable, yeah? So if you're already at 25, right, and say you start slowly increasing your body weight, in the next 12 weeks, yeah, in a surplus, you'd end up probably looking like a drop pie, yeah? And if you look like a drop pie, then you're not gonna like the way you look. You're gonna be very uncomfortable. So you're gonna then want to diet. And in order, like being 25%, you're not gonna be as insulin sensitive as you are here. So you're gonna gain more body fat than muscle tissue. You'll still gain muscle, I'm not saying that you won't, Obviously, that is dependent on your habits, etc. But you will not gain as much, and you'll gain more body fat over time. So my advice would be to get yourself to these body fat percentages first. And that's the reason why it's mainly down to insulin sensitivity. Yeah, here you're more insulin resistant, here you're more insulin sensitive. And that is going to be the main reason why you want to actually get down to this first. Annoying because you think, well, why do I have to go backwards to try and go forwards? But sometimes that's what we have to do, remember. We have to feel like we're taking a little bit of a step back to then catapult 100 steps forwards. I find that males struggle with that part more than females, because usually females like looking on the leaner side, yeah? The problem with a female is always normally accruing body fat over a longer period of time and maybe looking, some, in their opinion, slightly worse. But I can do a YouTube on that as well. So that wraps up today's YouTube, yeah? Follow me on Instagram at Nathan_Transcend. I have a lot of different free resources. I'll put a free resource in the comments section about actually gaining muscle and the smart way to body recomp. So you can have a read of that, but watch out for next week's YouTube or next month's YouTube. And I'll be going through this in a bit more detail on how to actually build muscle in a consistent way where you don't build as much body fat along the way or gain as much body fat. So thank you everyone. I'll see you soon.